Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Wilson Jr., and this is the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast, the music podcast on where I interview singers and musicians from genres of black music: gospel, jazz, blues, old school classic soul, old school hip hop, today's hip hop and R&B, Caribbean, Latin, Afrobeat, Afro-Latina, blue-eyed soul, disco, go-go, line dances, and the Lost 45s. So come with me as I take you on to a trip to the destination genre of black music right now on the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Legal Shield is a proud sponsor of the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Have you been involved in any types of accidents? Have you been a victim of identity theft? Have you been a victim of a computer fraud scam? Have you been in disputes with your tenants or landlords? If your loved one dies and they didn't write up a will for you or for your family, or you and your spouse are filing for divorce, or if you need help by opening up your small business, give Legal Shield a try. Visit their website at LegalShield.com and tell them you heard it here on the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Do it today. You'll be glad you did. I'm Sam Wilson Jr., host and creator of the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. As we celebrate the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I have a special bonus episode just for you. For this season of season number 5, my guest for this season is Mr. Kemp Harris. He is a folk, blues, and gospel singer, and he has a new album out called The America Chronicles. Now, if you like the episode I'm about to air right now, please go to youtube.com/the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. All you need to do is go to the YouTube homepage and go to the search box and type in the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. If you like the episode I'm about to air, please click the subscribe button. Please click the thumbs up button. Please leave a comment and please pass it on. And if you're not a Patreon member yet, what you waiting for? You're missing out on good stuff of all of the episodes that I'm airing on the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Go to patreon.com/the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. You got a computer? Then use your email address and your password and go to the Patreon homepage where you see all of the Patreon shows done by different creators, and go to the top search box and type in the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. Your donation helps me continue to bring you black music stories that needs to be told and needs to be exposed, as I continue to interview a diversity of musicians from the United States and overseas who love black music. Go to patreon.com/the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. And don't forget to check out youtube.com/the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast. In the meantime, enjoy the episode and thank you. Welcome to a bonus episode of the Black Soul Music Experience. I'm Sam Wilson Jr. as we celebrate the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I have a very special guest on my show. This gentleman that I'm about to introduce is an independent singer and music composer who sings folk, blues, and gospel. His new album, The America Chronicles, is available now on iTunes, and you can check out a couple of his songs, including Good Night, America.
Oh, you did listen.
Okay. Yes. And you can check out the music video right now on YouTube. So please help me welcome to the Black Soul Music Experience Podcast, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kemp Harris. Hi, Kemp. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to my podcast. Glad to have you here. And you are the first guest for the new year of 2026 as we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And when I posted something on Alignable during the summer, I wanted to look for someone I can do a Southern Soul episode. But when you saw my post, you responded. So I said, you know what? You were perfect to be a guest on my show to start off January 2026 as we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And as I said in the intro, I got a chance to check out your video. And not only that, I checked out some of your other previous videos that we're going to talk about that later on in the show. So
Okay,
how
I'm
you
going to
been doing
commend you right off the
otherwise?
bat for doing your homework. You are on it. So I think awesome.
Okay. So, as always, America doesn't know who you are. The world doesn't know who you are. So, I'm very delighted to interview you on this special episode. So, let us begin, shall we?
Okay.
Now, where were you born?
I was born in Edenton, North Carolina, and I was born in 1952. And Edenton, I would say it's on the eastern coast of North Carolina, about an hour or so south of Norfolk. And it, at the time, was a segregated town. I remember um, seeing the white only and colored only signs. I remember all that segregation sort of brings to you. But we left when I was 5 as part of that sort of northern migration. But yeah, a little historic southern town in North Carolina.
Hmm. Now, were your parents or any of your family relatives in the music industry, or that they had 9 to 5 day jobs?
No, they had my dad was a mortician in this little town, so he was a pretty prominent figure. And my mom was house. She did like house work in terms of working as a housekeeper. And neither of them were in the music industry, but I do remember my dad would play boogie woogie piano sometimes, and the first voice I ever heard singing, probably even inside the womb, was my mom's voice. She was in a lot of different gospel choirs, and but she has this booming. She's 95 years old, and she still sings with that booming alto voice. So that was pretty much what they did. But the music part came for me later. I mean, I did I was in a gospel choir. I was in high school glee clubs. I did it. So music was just a natural kind of thing that came. But yeah, it was like a big thing in the family to do.
And which high school did you go to?
Well, we left Edenton and we moved up to. It was sort of like one of my uncles moved up to Newton, Massachusetts, and then little by little, all the family members started coming, and that was sort of our jumping off point from my uncle's place. And I ended up in Framingham, Massachusetts, and I went to Framingham South High School. It was a predominantly white community, but there was a sizable enough black community I felt that I had a community that I could sort of relate to. We came from a big family, so there was that going on. So there was a critical mass of people of color there that I didn't feel that I was isolated in this school. So yeah, Framingham, Massachusetts.
Mm. And how far is it from Boston? Because I have a couple of relatives in Boston, Massachusetts. How far?
Okay. Framingham, you hop on the turnpike, and I say within 45 minutes, you can get to Framingham from Boston.
Mhm.
And right now, I'm living in Cambridge, Mass, which is right next door to Boston. But when we left Edenton when I was 5, so pretty much I've been a northeastern Massachusetts kind of kid since then. Like you can tell, my accent is gone. I had a good Southern accent when I first showed up. So much so that my cousins used to laugh and tease me. Maybe that's why I made it go away. I'm not sure. But yeah, so we've been here since I was 5 years old. So 73, I've been here a long time.
Mhm. And which college did you go to?
I went to Boston University. And if you would ask me when I was a kid, and I don't know where it came from, but if you would ask me when I was a kid, what are you going to be? I would say, I'm going to be a social worker. Had no idea where that came from. Maybe I saw a movie or something where somebody said that. I don't know. But I ended up going to BU and I majored in elementary education. So I spent a good deal of my career as a kindergarten, first grade teacher. I taught public school for 38 years. Um, and I was probably one of the maybe two or three male kindergarten teachers in the state at the time. And the cool thing now is that my former students, my first class from 1974, they've all found me on Facebook, and they come and see my shows. They, follow me on Instagram and Facebook. And so it's that full circle where, as a teacher, you get to see your former students as adults, and they tell you what was important, what you did in their time with you that meant something, what was valuable. And I think that all teachers should have that experience to sort of see what did you how did you influence kids. How did you do it? They still call me Mr. Harris. They can't say Kemp. And I'm like, you're 56, you're whatever, you can call me Kemp. No, no, you will always be Mr. Harris. But it's pretty cool that I'm still in touch with students, and they see me in the career that I have now. It's been really awesome, to sort of stay in touch with them and just sort of see what they've become and what my influence was and what was important to them at the time. So yeah, it's a pretty cool deal.
Was education your major in college?
It was when I was younger. I lived with um, my mom lived in Roxbury, and she wanted me to have a better education. So I lived out in Framingham when I got there with relatives. But when I was maybe in my junior year, sophomore year of high school, I joined this gospel choir, and there was a man and woman who directed this choir, and he was also a principal in the city of Newton. And I think that's how I got interested in education. So when it was time to go for my major, I had done a lot of volunteering at the school where he worked, and they had kids, and I thought their kids were hysterical. I never forget, I was babysitting once, and their youngest son went into this candy dish, not supposed to, comes out, face is green with candy staying. And it's like, did you did you go in the candy? And he was like maybe 3 years. He was like, no. I said, so what happened? And he said, um, a green bear jumped in my mouth and ran down my throat. And so that's why I'm green. And I thought, okay, if you can make that up on the spot, I need to spend more time with young people, because it was like so spontaneous. And because of that experience of just living with this family for a while, they sort of took me in as a foster kid. I went to school for elementary ed, and I started my teaching career in 1974. And I stayed in the city of Newton teaching for 38 years. I retired. Well, I tried to retire in 2012, but my principal, because I wanted to retire when I was 60, because I didn't want to be that guy who retires when you're 75 and you hobble home, and so I thought I want to retire when I'm 60. And I tried to do that, but my principal was like, couldn't you just stay for a few more years? And so I retired, got my pension. Then she said, well, and I went back. I said, okay, I will do 2 days a week, part time. I'll do that. The first year in, a kindergarten teacher got sick, like in October. And my principal came in, and she had that face and was like, Camp? I was like, yeah. Do you think you could maybe just finish out the year? I was like, this is what? So I ended up going back for a year, and I did that. And then I must admit, I liked that whole environment, and I ended up staying as an ISS aide for 5 more years. So I didn't really retire until 18 or so. I know that when the pandemic hit and school shut down, I was out, and I was glad, because I could not have done school on Zoom with 28 kindergarten or whatever kindergartners. So I'm glad I was able to sort of finish before all of that happened. But I had a good run. I had a wonderful parents that I worked with, administrators and teachers, and the relationships that I made, and also the kids. I think their energy kept me spontaneous. It kept me young, kept me honest. So I learned as much from them as hopefully they learned from me.
Mm. Now, who did you want to be when you grow up? You mentioned teaching and music, but what was some of the others career that you wanted to be when you grow up?
Well, it's odd. I mean, the aside from being a social worker, which never panned out, but being a teacher, that was really the career that I really wanted. But I also knew from my um, growing up that music and theater was something that I also wanted to do. And I learned to play piano by ear. So I sort of taught myself to play, and I was one of those people I could hear something and then go to the piano and sort of pick it through and sort of figure out how to play those chords. So if I need to do a fake book, a cheat sheet, I can do that. But in terms of you give me sheet music and go play this, it's that's not going to happen. But if I can hear it for a while, I can do it. So the entire time that I was teaching, I was I remember doing talent shows in high school. But Framingham, it was, we had a good critical mass of Black folks, but there was still that thing of, well, theater, there really aren't many parts for you. So I didn't get to do theater in high school. And I remember there wasn't a lot of encouragement, for me as a Black kid who wanted to do my music. I did talent shows and stuff like that, but it was sort of, um, I remember seeing like other like white kids do like, they do like the talent show. They do be in two different three bands. They get to do this,
Mhm.
they get to that. They were like, well, you can do one of those, one thing. So there was
Mhm.
that sense of, yeah, well, you can do it, but there wasn't a lot of big push and support. So I really did my music, and I would listen to my 45s and I would play my record night. And my voice teachers were Aretha Franklin and Dionne Warwick and Gladys Knight and Stevie Wonder. And those are my voice lessons. I didn't do any formal stuff. But when I got to around college age, a friend of mine dared me to go to an open mic at this African coffee house, and they had a clunky upright piano. Um, and I had learned to play piano, that same kind of thing when I was in Edenton. I remember we had friends who had this clunky upright piano in their hallway, and I would just plunk on the keys. And it's like, well, if you do two keys, I think that I didn't know it was called harmony, but that's what you're getting. And so this friend of mine dared me to do an open mic, and I went and I played for the first time in public at this open mic, and I think I was doing some Beatle tunes. I know how to play Let It Be, and I was doing some LaBelle tunes, and I was doing some things I liked. And they did not pay you, but they passed a hat at the end of the performance, and people really seemed to like it. And they passed the hat, and I made, I want to say, $32. That was my first paying gig, but
Mhm.
I think after that, I kind of got hooked, and I stopped being afraid to perform, in public. And from there, I went to play for a friend who was auditioning for a theater piece, and the director said, "Well, do you sing as well?" And I was like, "Well, yeah." And he says, "Well, why don't you audition?" It was like, oh, I hadn't thought about doing that, so I did that, and I got one of the lead roles in it. So for me, you have that sense, I'm good. I think I'm good, but I was always a little shy in front of people, but I was getting such good response that sort of helped bolster me, to sort of go out there and sort of do this thing. So the whole time I was teaching, I was doing theater, I was playing with a band. And I remember I was doing kindergarten, and they get out half day. They get out at 12:30. I remember I had this play that I was doing. Rehearsal started at 1, and kindergartners take a long time to get dressed in the winter. So I would have to get them started like, about a half hour early, just to make sure I can make it. And I remember on the winter times, they'd be sitting there like, "Mr. Harris, we're hot." I was like, "I know, honey, just unzip a little bit because I have to leave as soon as this. So we can't be here with boots when I'm late." So, but the parents understood my theater, and everybody was so supportive of what I was doing. It was awesome. Yeah.
Mhm. Now, how old were you when you started writing and singing songs?
I wrote my first song at age 14, and it was one of those, it was a very syrupy love. I think it was called Let the Water. And it was one of those, it's just like maybe 1969. It was like, the land is hot with trouble. Let the water cool you off. Let the soothing tide of brotherhood send our souls aloft. I mean, it was very, very I hope for the world kind of thing. But I began writing in earnest I would say probably maybe about like 24, 25 years old. I sort of started to really write pieces. Um, and I had a little Tascam 4-track recorder, and I could bounce my tracks, and so I could like write things and accompany my own background vocals and stuff. So I'd say like around 24, I started writing it in earnest. In fact, I have a series of DVDs I recorded way back. DVDs, I don't know if people use. I mean, CDs if they use them anymore. But and I just called them the 4-track sessions because they were these grainy 4-track recordings of all this stuff. But some of it was really good, and I pulled from some of that to rewrite them and to sort of redo them later. In fact, there are a couple of things on my new album that it was like ideas that I had from way back. So yeah, I think all artists should keep their 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 vault of stuff because you never know when you're gonna rework something, when something might come back in a different way. So yeah, but I started doing that, and the coolest thing that I ever got to do was I had friends who were in the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. And when they would come to Boston, there were two of the dancers who would stay here at our house in Cambridge, Desmond Richardson and Dwight Roden. They now have their own company called Complexions. And if you don't know them, you should check out Complexions Contemporary Ballet. But one day Dwight says, I'm going to do this piece for Alvin Ailey, and I need music for the male solo dance number. And he gave me 5 pages of prose, and he said, why don't you see what happens? And they went off to rehearsal, and I looked at this 5 pages of free form poetry that Dwight had written. And the line that I saw that stuck out for me was, if loneliness was black. And I don't know how it happened, but I sat at the piano and I just started what I call throwing chords, where I just throw, I don't even think what I'm doing. I just throw chords and see what hits. And these really atonal art song kind of chords came, and I wrote the piece, or it kind of wrote itself in a way. And I think that's really rare when that gets to happen for a musician. But I wrote the piece while they were at rehearsal. They came back that evening, and I played the piece for him. And Dwight said, "That's it. Good. I'll use it." And I was standing there stunned, like, "That's it? You? That's it?" And he was like, "Yeah, good, good, good." I went into the studio, I recorded that, and they invited me down to New York to City Center. I think it was like in '96, and they premiered the piece, and I was sitting in my seat. Just, I mean, it was beautiful, and I'm sitting in my seat, and this I felt a tap on my shoulder, and this man said, "Are you Kemp Harris?" And I was like, "Yes." I'm like, "What did I do? What have I done? Why are you here?" And he said, "Come with me." And I'm like, "Oh, geez." Okay, so I get up and we start walking down, and then we come up these stairs, and we're going up. He had taken me to the stage, and they had me come for the company bow, and I got this bouquet of roses that were used as part of the dance, and I just stood there, and I just started crying like a baby. But it was one of the most amazing experiences to write for that incredible dance company. And I mean, I've had a lot of good experiences. Um, that's something deep, and I don't know where hanging. Yeah, good at stop. Um, but that was one of the most amazing experiences ever to write for the Alvin Ailey American Dance Company. It was like, oh, I don't know if it's going to get any better than this. And I've had great times since, but that was a moment when my composition was, it was recognized on a worldwide stage. I got a call from Dwight once from Desmond, and he said, "Yeah, I'm at the Paris Opera House. I'm about to go dance. Hang on, I got to go." And he hangs up the phone. I'm like, "So you called to tell me you're going to perform my piece at the Paris Opera?" And then in the middle of the sentence left. But I thought, wow, wow, So yeah, I
Mm,
was hooked in the writing bug by then. Yeah.
right. Was being a singer and music composer your calling?
I think it was. I think I always loved music, but as I look at how I came to it, I would just get these opportunities. I remember I was here in Boston. There's a station called WGBH, Public television. And I was at a party, and this woman said, "Oh, you compose?" Well, I'm doing a documentary on him, and his last name was Matt Zelliger, and he was a black man who invented a machine called the shoe laster. It's sort of a machine that attached the top of the leather shoe to the sole of the shoe, and then they were doing this documentary. And she said, "How would you like to write the soundtrack?" And I'm like, had I not gone to that party, but so I would find myself in spaces, and I don't know if it was, some people say lucky, some people would say blessed, some people say whatever the word you want to use is, but I just was afforded a lot of great opportunities to get to work with some really cool people, and I was always so grateful to do that. And I was, I was sort of shy about performing as a solo artist. I was always more comfortable in a band because you had like other band folks with you, and you had a name. We had a band called Neon Grandmothers, a great band, um, but we're sort of like a beat poetry funk kind of yelling in your face kind of band, and I love that I had these other people there. And then I was in another band with some of the same folks called Roll Over Baby, and we were doing like um, rhythm and blues and blues. It was insanely cool stuff. And then I had written so much that the drummer in the band was like, you really need to do your own band. I was like, well, we should call it the. He said, no, no. I think you should call it the Kemp Harris Group. It's your music. You wrote it. Let's. And so I was like, I don't want to be in a band with my name. I don't want to. And he's like, no. So I've been really fortunate that I've had people around me who really supported me and sort of really gave me the confidence to sort of step out on my own. So for the past, I don't know, the past 10 years or so, maybe a little more, I've really done my music. I composed it. The band has my name. And so, I better act like I know how to play because it's, the buck stops here sort of thing. So, yeah.
Yes. Now, you mentioned earlier that you sung in a church. Were you in a church choir? And if so, what church did you belong to?
I was in the first choir that I was in. It was called the New World Gospel Choir, and in Newton, Massachusetts. That's maybe 25 minutes outside of Boston. It is really it was the center of the Black community in Newton, and it still is. It's still there. The church is still there, and so I became a member of that church when I was 14. It was and I think the thing that we liked as kids was they had something called BYF, the Baptist Youth Fellowship, and it really was just a time for us, like between 14 and 16-year-old kids, to get together and try to get a girlfriend, try to dance, and try but it was like but it's church time. But we had these after church sort of like. They were like almost like afternoon kind of parties, but I was on a gospel choir called the New World Gospel Choir, a great choir that was headed by that family that I stayed with for a while. The uh, Sam Turner and Flo Turner were the directors, and she played that. They did great music. They did a wonderful oratorio called "I Have a Dream." Speaking of Martin Luther King, I don't know if you can find this on Spotify or any of those things, but it was a two-album set, four sides called "I Have a Dream," and it sort of traced the story from Africa through slavery, through civil rights, through that, and it was an incredible oratorio. And at age 16, I had some major solo work that I did in that, and I did get the album, the actual album, and managed to burn it onto a CD. I don't know if it's found anywhere else, but it's the New World Gospel Choir. I Have a Dream. We did a second oratorio album called My Holy Mountain, but it was this incredible experience of being so young but giving so much uh, trust to do these solos and to be like a major figure in this choir, and it was awesome. Yeah, so that was there, and my mom, she was in a group called the Gospel Echoes, and I didn't realize because I was living out in Framingham with family, where she wanted me to go to school. My sister lived in Roxbury with my mom, but she said, "Oh, they used to tour." I was like, "What?" She said, "Oh, they would do like a tour. They get in the van, and they go. The Gospel Echoes were playing in Georgia, and they played South Carolina." I was like, "My mom toured." I never knew any of that stuff, but it's like I just knew that she was an incredible singer. So I remember going to see them at Southern Baptist Church in Boston, Massachusetts, which is still a viable church, and they're just listening to them sing and seeing all these different gospel groups come up and sing. And so I think that was a big influence on how I turn out as a musician. Um, yeah.
Now, growing up, who were some of your favorite folk and gospel artists?
Yeah, it's odd. I ended up in this folk world, but I'm not really a folk artist. I think I'm sort of more probably roots Americana, but with touch. It's like people say it's hard to categorize you because I'm somewhere between rhythm and blues, gospel, folk music, um, soul music. And so I sort of combined everything to become what I am and what I try to put out. But when I was a kid, I listened to everything. I listened from the Motown to gospel to rock music. I When I was young, I remember the first Woodstock thing, and because I loved Janis Joplin. I thought Joe Cocker. I mean, I liked the total freedom with her, how they yelled and sang and just went at it. And I was like, "Yeah, ma, I'd love to go to Woodstock." She's like, "You ain't going to no Woodstock, laying in the mud with a bunch of people you don't know." And it was like, well, I guess that won't be happening. But my influences. I mean, I remember walking through the halls of Newton South, and I was in because they had these underground hallways that connect the buildings. If you talk, you got a real echo. And I remember walking through for one with and just like starting to do this operatic thing, and I was like, Odyssey, no, and it was echoing out. And the music teacher came and was like, "Excuse me, do you go here?" I was like, "No, I'm visiting friends." He said, "Well, have you thought about, doing like opera?" It's like, no, but I just liked everything. I liked country music. I liked my cousins would laugh because they were like, "How come you like all that white boy music?" I was like, "No, I like everything, but just because you all don't like rock either." But in terms of the folk thing, I remember, um, I mean, in terms of black artists I liked, my singing came from everybody that I heard. But in terms of folk music, I listened to the music of Joni Mitchell. I listened to the music of Bob Dylan, Odetta. I listened to the music of Buffy Sainte Marie, and these were folks where it was like I don't know if a lot of black folks were checking that out. At least not in my family, but I was interested in everything. Um, Oddly enough, I remember when I was a kid, I think things that you do not like as a kid, and then you grow up and you realize, wait a minute, this is awesome. I remember that I wasn't that into Nat King Cole. It was like that, Ramblin' Rose, and my uncles and them liked them, so I thought I'm not gonna like what they liked. But then you grow up later and you're still like, wait a minute, Nat King, are you kidding me? Nat King Cole was the jam. And you realize all this stuff that watched over Arthur Prysock. I mean, we're talking like watching Ed Sullivan in the 50s and 60s and seeing these performers, and you're like, oh, please. And then later you're like, wait a minute. And I was probably learning something then without even knowing it. I was probably taking something in before I even knew it, and then found out later, yeah, they made a dent in here too. And you pulled back when you became who you are now. Because I'm not I have to say I'm a product of everything I've ever heard. I think that what we try to do is um, listen and absorb as much as we can, and then mold it so it becomes you. But I give credit to so many people that I heard growing up as a kid that I have to, I would be lying if I said, oh, I woke up one day and I was fabulous. It's like, no, you listened to a lot of people and you learned a lot of stuff, and that's what you should do. And then you try to make it your own, but don't deny that you're borrowing from a lot of folks. You're standing on the shoulders of a lot of people.
And who were your musical influences that had inspired you to sing?
uh Singing, I would say, like, I mean, I mentioned before, like Dionne Warwick. I found black female singers, the black female voice is special. It's a whole entity unto itself. So for me, when I like, I remember being like 12 years old and hearing Aretha Franklin do Dr. Feelgood. And it's like, don't send me no doctor, fill me up with all those pills. And I remember being 12 and trying to sing like that. And Sam Cooke doing Change is Gonna Come. Otis Redding, I saw Otis Redding once. I think I saw him maybe months before he died in that plane crash with the Barcades. But I mean, it's like, so I'm a kid and I'm like seeing, Otis Redding sing something. I remember he was in a red suit, and he was doing Try a Little Tenderness. I was like, I didn't know what I was learning, but I was learning, at the time.
Mhm.
Um, I remember going to see the Supremes before they became Dinah Ross and the Supremes when they were just, so that whole Motown thing, Martha Vandellas, Stevie Wonder, the Temptations, the Marvelettes, all that. So I had that whole thing going. But then I was also into, I got into like rock music so that Janis Joplin, just like that gravel in the throat. I was like, that's there was a freedom in that. It was like unleashed. Joe Cocker, his hands were going down. I'm feeling all right, and I was like, I just took from everybody. I took from everybody, and
Oh.
then this was another one. I saw The Wiz with Stephanie Mills when she was 15. We saw the original production, I was an adult by then and stuff, and so we was still learning. But this 15-year-old girl sings from The Wiz, and when she did her first note, it was in they, it was like, come meet the wizard, and she in her first note was like, he's the wizard. Bop. And I went, and I stood up and I just started yelling. And I was like, ah! So when music really hits me. I went to see Mahler's Second Symphony at Boston Symphony Hall, and Jesse Norman, the soprano, was singing the Mahler Symphony. And so I'm in the Symphony Hall, and I'm with my husband Bill, and I'm sitting there in Symphony Hall, and so Jesse Norman does the thing, and it stops, and I
Mhm.
stood up and I went, "All right!" And Bill's looking at because you're supposed to stand, I guess, and go, "Brava, brava," but I was like, "What the hell?" So yeah, when music hits me, it hits me. So my influences have been never ending, never ending. Yeah.
Mhm. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, you sang genres of music: folk, blues, and R&B and gospel. How does your singing voices matches those genres?
It's I went through periods. I think in the '80s when I was writing, I would write and I would try to emulate what I was hearing. So I went through a period of writing songs that would sort of take on David Bowie. That sort of a stark. I'm Daily we can be passion, brother. And I was then I would write things that would sort of follow the rhythm and blues I heard from Aretha Franklin. So when I play, I can mimic is not the word, but style really doesn't matter to me. Genre doesn't really matter to me. It's really more just the expression of the piece that I'm doing. So if I'm doing a gentle um, love song, folk piece that I've written, my voice will take on sort of a different characteristic. If I'm doing something like when you talk about folks who influenced me, there's an artist, Randy Newman. I think a lot of folks know him from Short People Got No Reason, but he had a live album that came out in the 70s, I think 1970, called Randy Newman Live at the Bitter End. And it was like hearing somebody just sit at a piano, nobody else, a piano, and play these sometimes political songs, sometimes absurdly nonsensical songs, but it was sort of like depending on what I'm singing, my voice will, it's always me, but my voice will take on what I need to portray that piece. I don't know if that makes sense. So it's not so much for me the genre, as much as what is that I'm trying to express right now. Does my voice need to be, do I pitch it high so that I'm at the top of my range so that you feel the gravel and the pain that I'm trying to put out with the piece I'm singing? Do I put it at a comfortable range so that I can deliver this um, this sort of beautiful tone that's that's so it depends on what I'm trying to put across. And I think it for me it's not so much about the genre as much as it's about the emotion that I want to evoke with what I'm doing.
Now, let's talk about your new album, The America Chronicles. And as I
Hmm.
said earlier, I got a chance to check out the music video, Good Night America. We'll talk about that in a few minutes.
Okay.
Now, is that album is kind of like the concept album, like the Marvin Gaye What's Going On LP? Is it kind of like a concept
Yeah,
album?
yeah. It's definitely there's a definite thread that runs through the entire album, and what I was trying to express in it was what does it feel like? With my music, I never try to preach at people. I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm just expressing and reflecting back what I see happening in the world, and I think that's what the job of an artist is to do. The artist, I mean, I love dance music. I love, write a good tune. It's like shake, shake, shake. But for me, at this point anyway, I'm reflecting back what I see happening in this world, particularly in this country that we live in. And so the album was to sort of reflect what it's like to live in America at this time, particularly at this time, as a Black gay man in this country. And so I wanted each piece has some reflection about what I see going on, whether it's political or whether it's social justice or what it is, but there's a running thread of I'm just reflecting to you what it feels like to me to be a Black gay man in this country because I've seen a lot of different phases of this country.
Hmm.
I was born in the segregated South, so I saw that. We came up north, I saw that. We went through the civil rights movement, I saw that. We had, that grace period of where it seemed like our country wanted to do better. It seemed like our country wanted to make amends for what had going on. But I find that American history tends to be very cyclical. So you had slavery, then you have okay, we're gonna end slavery. So now we're gonna have Reconstruction. There were black senators. There were things were great, great, great. Some white people got mad. So then we get Jim Crow and we get the Ku Klux Klan. We move on past that. We get the Civil Rights Movement. We get some affirmative action. We get some like trying to do better. Some white people got mad again. Now we've got Donald Trump, for 2 years. So it's like you keep watching the cycle do this, and when you think you've made some progress here, somebody goes, you know what? We enough of that. Let's go back a little bit. And so I just wanted to sort of reflect what I saw happening in the country. So some of the songs are like there's one song that I wrote called Tulsa, which is sort of written about reflecting on the fact that there are people who live in Tulsa, Oklahoma, who do not know about the massacre of Black people that happened there. And I'm like, wow, that's interesting. So I needed to write about that. I wrote a one piece called Standing Your Ground. And it was about that after Trayvon Martin was murdered. I had written this piece way back then, but I sort of revamped it when I did this record. But that thing of that, there are these legislated laws called standing your ground. And if I make you a little bit nervous, you have the right to shoot me because you felt a little nervous. I'm like, does that law work the same in reverse? I'm not sure that it would. So I'm just looking at what I see happening and then just sort of shining the light back because I think that's what an artist has to do. So the the theme of the record throughout is this is America and this is the America that I see. Um, and I'm not preaching for you. I'm not asking you to do anything different. You don't have to. You don't have to listen to this at all if you don't want to. But I will say if I sing about something, and I'm not making anybody the victim, I'm not saying that you're a terrible person. I'm just saying here's the situation. And if you're mad, you have to decide, are you mad because I said it? Or are you mad because it's true and you don't like it and you want to do something about it? Or if you are just mad and you don't want to hear it, those are all your choices. But that's what me as an artist try to do. And the
Now,
Muscle Shoals thing was crazy, going down to Muscle Shoals to record it. Ho, ho,
oh,
ho, ho,
Muscle
ho.
Shoals,
Because
that's the
yeah, I mean,
studios that had Aretha Franklin and
that's the
Wilson
studio that
Pickett
I recorded
and the
in.
Rolling Stones.
I
Yes.
recorded it, Fame. Yeah,
Mm.
and the thing was, I did this showcase. I was in Asbury Park, and I was at the Stone Pony, which was Bruce Springsteen's stomping grounds. And I was there, and I was doing the showcase, and a man, Freebo, who was Bonnie Raitt's first bass player, and Freebo was in the audience, and I've heard music that he's played. You know, it's like he's playing so much stuff, but I didn't know who he was. So I do my set. Um, and this man walks up and he says, I did a song called Ruthie's, and it's about, the refrain is, they're just God-fearing people with family values, but they don't value no family with people like me. And I done this song, and he walks up and he said, that's really some of the best stuff I've heard all week. I'd like to take you to Muscle Shoals and record. I didn't know who this was. And so I said, that's cool. Like, do you play? He was like, yeah, I play a little. And then my manager at the time was hitting me in the side going, Kemp, it's Freebo. You need to talk.
Mm.
So we ended up really going down, and I knew what this record was going to be. I knew what I was going to be singing about. So I'm looking, and my husband looks up the voting pattern in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. It is the reddest part of the state, and I'm like, okay, I'm about to go down to Fame Studio, and I'm going to record these songs, Stand in Your Ground, and Tulsa, and how are these musicians going to react to what I'm about to say? And they were unbelievable. I don't know what their politics were. They knew mine, but they came to make the music, and that's what we did. And it was one of the best experiences that I've had. And being in that studio, I mean, I was playing the same piano that Aretha Franklin played, and her picture was up on the wall. And there's the videographer that we had did a shot of me standing there looking at her picture, and the Wurlitzer keyboard that's used, and this song "I Never Loved the Man" is like boom, 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 boom. You're no good, heartbreaker. You. So I'm sitting there, and as I'm leaving, the engineer was like, you know what? If you don't do a cover of "I Never Loved a Man" on that Whirly, you're gonna hit yourself. So I sat down and I did a cover of "I Never Loved a Man" on that Whirly, and I'm like, I'm playing the piano that Aretha Franklin played, and at the time the Freebo, the producer, was like, we were doing my album, and he was like, I didn't know you could sing like that. I was like, dude, I was in a gospel choir. I'm a black man. Yes, we can sing like that. When you, but it was a great experience. We had a good time. Yeah.
Mm. Now, I got a chance to check out your songs and your music videos on YouTube, including Goodnight America. And I also got a chance to see some of your other music videos from other albums, including Rise Up, Stand Up,
Yeah.
and Don't You Hear Them, America,
Yeah.
and Standing Your Ground. And you already mentioned to our audience what those songs is all about. And but what is not standing your ground, but rise up, stand up? To me, that song is kind of reminds me of Bob Marley. Get
Hmm.
stand
Yeah.
up for your rights. Is
Yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
like similar to Bob
You,
Marley's
yes,
song?
you know what happened with that? I have a friend. His name is Steve Scrovan, and Steve was one of the head writers for the show Everybody Loves Raymond. So he's been out in L.A. and he's major. So Steve calls me one day and he said, Kemp, I'm doing a documentary about Ralph Nader. And Ralph Nader, my connection to Ralph Nader was that when he was doing all of his stuff around back in the '60s, he had done the whole thing with automobiles and those seatbelts, and he was, he was a real activist and carrying on. Um, and my connection to Ralph Nader was that I had a friend who had a 1963 Chevy Corvair, which is one of those dangerous cars Ralph Nader was talking about, that we were driving around, and it's like we had no idea that we were in like a death trap that could tip over with no seatbelts. But anyway, Steve says, I'm doing a documentary about Ralph Nader, and I'd like to have music for it for the closing credits. And we were going to use Fight the Power by the Isley Brothers. Um,
Mhm.
Time is surely wasting. There's no
Mhm.
guarantee. So he says, but they want a whole lot of money for the rights to do it, and we don't want to pay that. So could you write something that reminds people of that, and we'll
Mhm.
pay you a whole lot less money, but we'll get, and it'll be more money than you got now. So I wrote that piece with Fight the Power in mind.
Mhm.
I wrote it, sent it to Steve. They put it in the film. I go and see, and it was another one of those moments where I'm sitting in the theater, and the documentaries and the closing credit, and all of a sudden I hear, it's like, that's me. That's me. And now every day on Ralph Nader's radio program that happens on, I don't know what station is out in wherever they are, but my song is played every day as part of his theme song. So that song it has that feel of stand up for your rights, but it was like that's where it came from. It's a cheaper knockoff of Fight the Power because they didn't want to pay them money. So, but I love that song, and the video for that was done with a group of friends I work with called the Shoal Survivors, and the guy who produced his name is Carl Sturken, and he is this really cool producer. He actually discovered Rihanna. I'm like, I hang out with some pretty. It's like I don't have their money, I don't have their power, but it sure is nice to hang out with people who are movers and shakers, and every now and then you get like a cool thing that you get to do. So I'm sort of grateful with the people that are in my life that sort of give me these opportunities to do cool stuff. But yeah, that song it was it was an anthem. It was like an anthem of, just, stand up, rise up. And the first time I did a mock-up for it. My mom and my aunt came to the studio and they sang the first backup for it. And you can even hear them in that track. But we went to this studio and my mom and my aunt, these church gals, showed up with the orange lipstick, the wig hats, and we go into this warehouse studio, and these two old ladies came in, and they burned it up. They were good. And I was going to do this remake of a gospel piece, um, Didn't It Rain? And I was
Mhm.
going to sing it, and my mother and my aunt were going to do the backup. So we
Mhm.
do a track, and the guitar player was like, "We should let your mom have a go." I was like, What?" So she does a take, and it was an acapella piece. She does a take, and I'm doing background my aunt. And at the end of it, they were like, "Yeah, we like your mom's version better." I was like, "What?" So on the record, my second album, Edenton, it's my mother, and I've got video of them doing it. It's my mother singing lead, and when they finished, the guys who run the studio were like, "Oh my, do you think you could stay and maybe jam?" You don't ask two old women in their 80s later to stay and jam. So my mother says, "We'll come back and sing for you all another day because we's about to go to Foxwood. It's a gambling casino, but we'll come back another." And then they left. And the guys in the studio were like, "Did that just happen? Did those two old ladies burn it up and then blow us off to go gamble?" I was like, "Yeah, it happened. That's them. That's how it works." But yeah, it was a great experience. And so yeah, they're on that record. If you listen to the background vocals, you hear my aunt, you hear my mom chirping with the rest of them.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Now, Dr. King's birthday was on January 15th, which is, well, on a Thursday. And yes, he would have turned 97. Now, if Dr. King and Coretta and some of his children were still alive, and if you would had invited him to your concert, what would Dr. King say to the audience? We mentioned what's been happening in America, what's been happening with Israel and Gaza and Palestine, what has been happening with the voter suppression rights, what has been happening to the Black community, the Latino community, the Native American community, the LGBT community, those with disabilities,
Hmm.
those the mental illness, the mentally retardation, and everything that everyone has been poking, the name calling from all the news reporters who wanted to ask the questions and everything. What would Dr. King would say to the audience if he was still alive?
Hmm. It's interesting when I do my concerts, I think that I present in a way that it doesn't it doesn't um, yell at you. It doesn't make you feel bad. I'm just reflecting. I've had people come up and say what was one of the best compliments I ever got was someone said, "Your music makes me want to do better because you're just asking me to think." And I would hope that Dr. King would hear my music and sort of hear that same message of, I'm not here to tear you down, but I'm here hopefully to make you want to build us up. And I feel that the way that I present it, it's an open portal for people to listen and maybe think in a different way. It's a chance to invite people to maybe look at an issue in a way that they had not looked at it before, and to ask you to think, ask you to reflect on this in another way, and hopefully it will move something in you that's going to make you, as that guy said to me after a concert, you make me want to do better. And I thought there is no better compliment for that. And I if I did a song, I think like if Dr. King heard Goodnight America, um, that he would absolutely understand that message of, I'm just saying, like the last verse says, "Good night, America. Storms are closing in, and you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. So, good night, America. I'll see you in the morning when another day is dawning and the sun comes shining through." It's like we've got to grapple with reality. We've got to grapple with what's happening, but we can't lose sight of, we can hope for something better. We can hope for tomorrow morning is going to be better. And that doesn't mean that you're complacent and that you're just sitting around hoping the world's going to get good. But it's like, I'm going to tell you what bothers me. I'm going to tell you what our issues are. I'm going to tell you what needs to be different. But at the same time, I'm going to ask you to stay hopeful, because we've seen it come and we've seen it go. And we can make mistakes when you've made some progress. Oh, good, we're good. We've already done that. We're good now. Oh, we had a black president. We're all set. No, 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 no. It doesn't stop there. The work sort of continues. And I would hope that he would see that my music is asking people to continue
Mhm.
working.
Mhm. Now, as you mentioned about teaching, you are also a teacher. What does the name of the school and what grade were you teaching at the
Well,
school?
I started teaching in Newton, and what happened was there was a period where they had what they call declining enrollments. They were having, I don't know what was going on in the 70s with fewer kids, but I would get to a school, and the population of kids would decline. So being the last one in, you're also the first one who gets to go. So I taught in about four schools in Newton before I landed at a school called Bowen, and I spent like 28 years in that school. So that was the main crux of where I spent most of my time in Newton. And then I finished out my career in Newton. I spent 7 years at a school called Ainger School. And the parents that I met and the families that I was sort of part of, it's like I remember they did like this big article on me for a Newton newspaper, and I was sort of like this, like a rock star in
Mhm.
Newton, Massachusetts, because I had taught so many kids. I went to so many bat mitzvahs that I have like yarmulkes. I have a collection of yarmulkes upstairs from all the bat mitzvahs that I went to. Um, and then between that and then, like, you have the Myrtle Baptist Church community. So it's like you have your foot in the Black community, you have your foot in the Jewish community, you have your foot in just this whole world of education, and parents who are really just grateful that their kids had um, the experience of having this young, and at the time when I started teaching it, about 24, 26, whatever, but they wanted to be in my classroom. And then they would be like this, we want our kids in your classroom. I thought for me that was awesome, because they wanted their kids to experience that kind of diversity. They wanted their kids to be at 5 years old. They'd be like, you weren't supposed to ask for teachers. You're not supposed to do that, because that's, you're not supposed to say, I want my kid in that room. But they would say things. They'd come to me and say things like, my child. And I'm the only male teacher in the school. They say things like, my child does really well with male leadership. And it's like,
Mhm.
I'm the only male teacher in the school. Are you? What are you saying? My child does really well with someone who does a lot of music. They knew I had a piano in my classroom, but so it was. And then teachers asked for other teachers as well, not just me. But there was a real sense that people saw it as a cool thing to have their kids experience that at such an early age. Like a vibrant, black man who was loving his job, was sharing his music with, and I tried to create a space for kids that I knew I had to do all the learning. There's curriculum. I get that. But I also wanted a space that valued them as people. I never like that sort of Miss Jean romper room. So, boys and girls, what a week. I never talk to kids like that. I just talk to them like they were like real people. And we would just
Mhm.
really hang out and have a good time. So, to this day, I have parents who said, you changed my kid's life. This is what they're doing now. And I will never forget, being in your classroom. And so I, I just sort of found like that whole idea of being able to help influence kids. I remember every year I would take my class to the gymnasium and we would just sit on the floor and watch people come in to vote because it was one of the voting stations. And so people would walk in, there would be this class of kindergartners just staring at them like, and it was like that. What's happening? But it got to the point that the poll workers expected us to come down and they would show us how the machines worked. And so my class we were like totally into it. And they were like, and they would show us how things work. I get a call later from one of my former students. She now works on political campaigns for Senator Ed Markey here in Massachusetts. She said, um, remember when we used to go down to the gym and we would just sit and watch people vote? I was like, yeah. She was like, well, I think that's when I decided that I was like, oh, so as a teacher, you have to always realize that what you just do because it's your job, you have no idea how it's going to affect that kid and maybe what it's going to do for that child that day. And so you realize that your role may have more meaning than you even knew or more effect than you even knew it had. And so that's, I think, when teachers get to hear from students from their past, that's when you get that sense of this is why we do it. This is why teachers do it, because we change things, we change some lives. Yeah.
While we on the subject of education, and yes, I had to take up music education as well as social studies, there were some things that were not talked about in the history books. We, me growing up, we did talk about Black history, but during then there was no women's history or Native American history or Caribbean American history, as
Right.
well as um, oh, yeah, Black Music Month and Pride Month,
Right.
and as also Native American and everything. But yes, we have talked about Dr. King, what we do like every January.
Hmm.
And and as you said earlier about music, which is also I had to take up. And I have to ask you this question, since this is a Dr. King episode, on why is education is so important.
you know I think especially now it's even more important because we are watching the erasing of history happening right before our very eyes. We are watching history being altered. We are watching so much in terms of, if you can take the mind of children when they're young, you set them for when they're older. So education, um, and exposing kids to, certainly at appropriate measures or whatnot, but having kids know that there are different people in the world. There are there are people of color. There are gay people. There are people who have disabilities. And I have to say that when I was teaching in Newton, I was very fortunate because it was a very progressive and forward-thinking educational system, so that I was one of the kids in terms of inclusion classes. I was one of the first classes where we like full on inclusion. We had students who were, I remember this little girl who had cerebral palsy and she had no motor skills. She came in a wheelchair. She did not speak. But she was integrated into that classroom and she got the services that she needed. But the other kids saw her every single day, and we would be sitting there. I'll never forget. We were sitting one time, and um, one of the kids said, um, Bridie says that we should go out to the playground. I'm like, do, do you just want to go out? They were like, yeah, Bridie said that. And I'm like, well, I know Bridie didn't say that, but that sense that Bridie was their pal. And it was like, yeah, so they'd be interpreting for me what they thought Bridie wanted to do and stuff. And so I just think having kids exposed to truth, having kids exposed to what's real and what's just is so important. And uh, I was lucky that I was in a school system where that happened. But I know that there's a good deal of the country where that wasn't happening then, and it sure is not happening now. So, in terms of education, I mean, we have a government administration now that is abolishing the Department of Education. You can't have the kinds of oversights on special ed, that you used to have. Why? Because if we get rid of it, then you'll forget about it, and if we wait long enough, it will just go away, and then we can begin to indoctrinate kids. I mean, I find it so interesting when they talk about you're indoctrinating kids. It's like telling kids the truth isn't indoctrinating them, but I think when you change history, it's like the new rant that I'm hearing now is how slavery really wasn't that bad, and there were some benefits that came from that, and people are sincerely teaching that in like some of these red states, and I'm thinking to myself, that's so interesting because I did not know that slavery was a vocational work training program. And if it was such a good program, how come more white kids didn't sign up? It's sort of like, let's be truthful with people here. Slavery was what it is. Don't come and try to tell us now how it wasn't a bad thing. And let's look at both sides of how slavery. It's like, no, you're making stuff up because you want to change what, no, you want to erase what's true and what's real. And I look at this time that we're in, and sometimes I feel, I don't know if we're going to come out of it, but I've seen the cycle before, and I think we will come out of it. I don't know if I'll be here to see this one, but hopefully it will come back around again. But in terms of education, it's more important now than ever because there is a full-on assault against um, against so much, against so much. Yeah,
Yeah, says if Dr. King was still alive today, he would see education in shambles. And he would have been in tears when he would not like the stuff
yeah,
that we were seeing now. So, like you said, we have a long way to go. And there's an old saying because America will not know where we're going if you not know where we've been.
yeah. And that line in that song "Goodnight America," I used to say, and you don't know where you're going, and you don't know where you've been. But Noel Stukey, who was part of Peter, Paul, and Mary, I met his
Mhm.
daughter, and he heard the song, and he said to me, Kemp, and I'm like, I'm talking to Paul from Peter, Paul, and Mary. Oh my, okay, okay. I listened to them when I was a kid, but he was like, Kemp, if I had been your producer, I would have changed one line in the song. And I was like, what is that, Mr. Stukey? And he said, if I would have said, and you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. And from that moment on, when he said, I sing that line, and when I do that song now live, I do that line every time because I think that's so important that you can't know where you're going to go if you don't remember where you've been. And if you sort of think, well, we achieved that, so we're done now. No, we're never done. You've always got to know where you came from because otherwise you're going to keep making the same mistake or you're going to keep letting other people make that same mistake for you. Yeah.
Right. Now, here's a question that I always ask my guests living or dead, which folk or gospel artist you wish you wanted to meet or to perform with?
Wow. Oh, God, there's so many. you know, she wasn't necessarily like all gospel. She did everything. But if I could sit down across from a piano with Aretha Franklin and throw down "How I Got Over," because I do that song when I perform "How I Got Over," and I first heard that um, when she did the Amazing Grace album,
Hmm.
and I, and I remember she had sort of talked about the fact that I remember that was one of Dr. King's favorite songs. He had a bunch, and maybe he liked the version by Mahalia Jackson. I'm not sure, but if I could sit at a piano and do, how I got over, my soul looks back and wonders how I got. If I could sit with Aretha Franklin and and hear her hit some of those notes out of nowhere, and I would get to sing them with her. So when I was learned to sing, those were the people that I listened to. So I'm like, you know what, you were my voice teacher anyway. I would love that. I would love that. That would send me over the edge. But also, Patti LaBelle wasn't a gospel singer. Well, she, you know what? All those women were gospel singers. They were. They did other stuff. But if I could scream with Patti LaBelle a couple of times, my day would be made.
Oh, well. Now, here in the Black Soul Music Experience, I always ask my guests who are the top 10 R&B Black artists of all time. But since this is a Dr. King episode, we're about to do the Black Soul Music Experience top 10 songs of all time in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Now, here's how it works.
Okay.
We do it like a top 10 countdown, like the show America's Top 10, hosted by the late Casey Kasem. And
Mm-hmm.
then we get to the bottom five and we find out what's some of the, the airplay, but didn't get that much airplay, especially if it was played on black radio stations or some of the top 40 stations. When we get to the top five, we will find out what was some of the best airplay that has gotten not only on the Dr. King Day, but some other things as well. So, did that song received a top 10 hit or number one hit on Billboard's Soul Singles charts? Or was that song used in any commercial or public affairs program? Or was that song used in a movie or in a PSA? And we're all going to find out when we do the top 10. So I'm going to start off with my top 10. And
I don't know if I'll have 10. I'm gonna do as many as I can, but okay, go.
okay, I'm going to start with number 10. Here's one of the songs that's not getting recognized, but it's a lost classic called Freedom is a Constant Struggle by Barbara Dane and the Chambers Brothers. And this was released on the Folkways label back in 1966. Now, when I first heard the song 3 years ago, and I said, "Oh, I never heard this song before." It's a shame that they never played it on black radio, especially on a Dr. King weekend. So I found that and I said, I would have used that song and I would play it on my show back then. But I put that number 10. So I put Freedom is a Constant Struggle by Barbara Dane and the Chambers Brothers. Number 9, By the Time I Get to Arizona by Public Enemy. This was the first hip hop album in honor of Dr. King. But when President Reagan signed the bill back in 1983 to make Dr. King a national holiday, and then we had to wait 3 years later to become a national holiday, out of all of the 50 states, except for one state that did not celebrate Dr. King Day, and that was the state of Arizona. And by then, Governor Evan Meekum is saying, we ain't celebrating Dr. King Day. Now, you hear all the name calling, saying he was a communist and some of the other things, etc., etc. So when Public Enemy did the video, so imagine if Arizona would have celebrated Dr. King Day. If it did, then we wouldn't be having me doing the same information. So I put down By the Time I Get to Arizona by Public Enemy at number 9. Number 8, Why the King of Love is Dead, performed by the late Nina Simone. She performed that live right after Dr. King was assassinated on April 4th, 1968. So it didn't get that much airplay, but it was like a 10-minute song. that was performed live. I think it was somewhere in the Westbury Music Fair on Long Island. So I put down Why the King of Love is Dead by the late Nina Simone at number 8. Number 7, We Shall Overcome by Joan Baez. As a singer and an activist, and she performed the song in live concerts and everywhere in honor of Dr. King. So I put down We Shall Overcome by Miss Joan Baez. Number 6, People Get Ready by the Impressions. And
Oh,
this was a top 10 hit on the ABC label. Now, Curtis Mayfield was writing all the songs during the civil rights movement. So he brought that to our attention. So we put People Get Ready by the Impressions at number 6. Number 5, Caravan of Love by Isley Jasper Isley. That's the other half of the Isley Brothers. And this was from their LP, Caravan of Love, released on the CBS Associated label.
you
Now,
are good.
that song went to number 1 on Billboard's R&B Black Singles charts on November 30th, 1985 for 3 weeks. I got a chance to see the video. You see people of all diversity and all cultures. So we put Isley, Jasper Isley, Caravan of Love at number 5. Number 4, Choice of Colors by the Impressions. This was number 1 on Billboard's Soul Singles charts on June 16th, 1969 for 1 week. Now, this came out at a time when racism was still around after the death of Dr. King. So I put down Choice of Colors at number 4. Number 3, I have different versions of Abraham, Martin, and John. One was originally done by Dion first in 1968. Then
Anybody?
you had other performers, including the late Harry Belafonte, and also you had Marvin
It
Gaye
froze
did
up a little bit.
his, but in other words, they didn't get that airplay.
Okay.
And then also another one by the late Moms Mapley. Now, the bad news is the song is not on iTunes, but I just found it on YouTube while she was performing it on the Merv Griffin show when it was on CBS back in 1968, 69. So I put that version, Abraham, Martin, and John, at number 3. Number 2, we have a tie. So number 2, we have Respect Yourself by the Staple Singers. Top 10 hit released on the Stax label back in the fall of 1971. And What's Going On by the late Marvin Gaye. That went to number 1 on Billboard's Soul Singles charts on March 27, 1971 for 5 weeks on Motown's Tamla label. Now, when Berry Gordy Jr. found out that Marvin was going to do a protest album, Berry Gordy was furious. So when the executives had dropped off the single at all of the record stores and the radio stations, it went to number 1. So it was Marvin's year. It was a success. So we have that. What's Going On went gold, sold over 1,000 copies in print. And we put that at number 2 along with Respect Yourself. And the number 1 song, Happy Birthday, Mr. Stevie Wonder.
Stevie Wonder. Yeah.
And that was from his LP Hotter Than July, released on Motown's Tamla label back in the fall of 1980. And he dedicated that album in memory of Dr. King. At the same time, Stevie Wonder has been going to Congress and asking Congress to make Dr. King Day a national holiday. He kept on going back and forth, 1981 all the way up until 1983, when President Reagan signed a bill to make Dr. King a national holiday. A lot of black elected officials were happy. Not all of the black elected officials were happy. Some wanted to have that on his actual birthday, January 15th. And then, yes, you got the Republicans are saying, why are you signing that Negro person to make it a first Negro holiday? So there we are. So that's where we are back then. That's where we are today,
Yeah,
overturning everything that we have succeeded and achieved. But America is not giving the succeeding and the achieving what we have worked. Because me growing up, when I heard about how come there's no black president, how come there's no black mayors, how come there's no black governors, so I said to myself, it ain't gonna happen. But when we see some elected officials in the House and Senate to represent our district, to represent our boroughs and our state that we represent. So we have a long way to go. And when the Kennedys have made a prediction that 1968, by the late Senator Robert F. Kennedy, he said 40 years from now, you will have an African American to become president of the United States. And one of my late church members have sent me that thing. And I said,
wow,
is this true? So the Kennedys were known for predicting things,
yeah,
although they didn't live to see it, but it became a reality. So I've seen many few black mayors across the cities, from the NYC to Philly to Los Angeles to Atlanta to Denver to Detroit. And now I live to see the first African American president to become the United States. Now, we almost had Kamala to
yeah.
become the first woman and the first African, Indian, West
Hmm.
Indian president of the United States.
But they just
And
couldn't
yes,
do
there were some other women who wanted to become presidents too, but there's an old saying, it is what it is.
it. Yeah, and they just
And
couldn't do it. They couldn't vote for Kamala. They just couldn't do it. But what we have instead, we have Tim Scott from South Carolina. But that's a whole other world. Your
yeah,
list of songs was amazing, and the reason I was freaking out so much, like um the one by the Impressions, which it was Choice
choice of
Colors.
colors.
I have the 45 in my. I still have a 45 record player that can play 45, 78, 33, and 16. I have Choice of Colors as a 45 in my collection. So when you were saying these records, I was like, but so you're good. I mean, you did from 10 down with the label, the date, the whole thing. I'm not that good, but I'll tell you the songs that really hit me. And I was thinking in terms of, I read this thing about some of Dr. King's favorite pieces. And when I was in this gospel choir, there's a man, Jesse Banks, who had this beautiful tenor voice, and he sang this song, um, "If I Can Help Somebody." And I don't know if anybody's like, "If I can help somebody," beautiful. And I understand that was one of Dr. King's favorite pieces. But these are songs that hit me. So a lot of the ones that you mentioned, I had too. But I also had Nina Simone's "Young, Gifted, and Black." I don't know what number 9, 10. I'm not going to go there because I haven't thought that far. But "Young, Gifted, and Black" was it hit, and it was a revolutionary piece that made people sort of and then the way she performed it, and she was at the top of her high priestess of blackness at the I mean, Nina Simone was giving it to you. So "Young, Gifted, and Black," and then when I was a kid, Dionne Warwick's "What the World Needs Now." It was like, we've got all this fuss and fight. We got wheat fields. Come on, we don't need that. What we need is them. So that to me, Dionne Warwick doing "What the World Needs Now." Um, uh, when I was a kid, I remember hearing Mahalia Jackson do "He's Got the Whole World in His Hands," and it was
Mm,
like this very God music. And Mahalia Jackson, I didn't quite get her as a kid, but I like
mhm.
that song. But I've gone back to listen to her, and she did a version of "How I Got Over," but she also did a version of Duke Ellington's "Come Sunday," which is this like jazz gospel. It was so good, so good. So that's one good. But then I had um uh I had "We Shall Overcome," of course, but then "Precious Lord" by Mahalia Jackson. I would hear that on radio a lot, and then it was just like just so stark and so pure. the way that she sang that song. Um, and then for me, Sam Cooke's "A Change Is Gonna Come."
Hmm.
And then I heard Aretha Franklin do a version of "A Change Is Gonna Come," and I don't know whose I like better. They're both amazing, but I got this Aretha Franklin thing. So, but yeah, but "A Change Is Gonna Come" was one of them. Um, and did you mention "People Get Ready"?
Yes.
That was when that was Curtis Mayfield and the Impressions. But again, Aretha Franklin did a version of that too. And if Aretha Franklin covers your tune, you forget you wrote it. You don't even remember that you wrote it anymore because
Hmm.
it was just so amazing. But as a kid, there's this song, and I never really understood it when I was a kid. But the song, "A Balm in Gilead," and it was just this beautiful. There is a balm in Gilead to heal the. And so for me, there was like a lot of gospel music that I just heard as a kid that I
Hmm.
don't even remember if I heard it on radio or not, but they're these important songs. And I remember when I was a kid, I thought they were saying there's a bomb, like a bomb, boom, a bomb in Gilead. I was
Yeah,
like,
but they
who
was
wants
talking
to
about
go?
a bomb.
Yeah,
That's
they
what they.
BALM, but I just
Mhm.
liked the sound, but I kept saying, yeah, but it's a bomb in Gilead. Why? But why do I like this song? There's a bomb. Then I realized later, it's like, no, 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 it's a bomb, BALM. But yeah, those are the songs that sort of just from when I think back that I remember those songs affected me in terms of a movement in terms of trying to change the world kinds of songs, and those are the songs that
Mhm.
affected me in that way. Yeah.
Yes,
But
yes. So
you are good. You had the boom 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 the date, the year, the label that came out on. I,
yes, because like I once was a radio DJ personality, and me growing up during the
where
early
was this?
'80s. Well, I once worked at WVOX Radio back in the mid '90s.
Okay.
So then by the early 80s, when Black radio will start playing songs in honor of Dr. King, so I picked it up where they left off at. So when
Mm-hmm.
I was at WVOX, I said, I'm going to pick it up where they left off at and continuing that tradition. And the
Okay.
same thing with my podcast. I'm continuing that tradition. And the same thing with talk shows too. Not all of the talk shows will do a Dr. King episode, but Arsenio Hall was the only brother that did that episode in honor of Dr. King.
Mm-hmm.
No other talk show would do that, but Arsenio Hall has stepped out on faith and had his spine and said, we're doing a Dr. King episode, whether they like it or not. And that was his thing. So special shout out to Arsenio Hall because he was the only African American talk show host that did the Dr. King episode every year from its inception until by the time he got canceled in spring of 1994. So
Okay.
hats off to Arsenio Hall.
All righty. That's
Well,
awesome.
yes. Well, Kemp, thank you so much for being here on the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. It's been a pleasure talking as we celebrate the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Thank you so much and continued success. And as I said, I got a chance to check out the music video and I downloaded the song too from the America Chronicles and I got a chance to see some of the other episodes. So thank you so much for being here
I
on
am so
my
glad I
show.
saw your on alignable. I'm so glad I responded to that. This was great. Thanks so much. This was really good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, before we go, where can we follow you on social media?
Okay, you can follow me on Instagram at Kemp Harris Music. I'm on Facebook at Kemp Harris. All of my albums are on Spotify. I've done 4 CDs. They're all on Spotify. And my website is www. One word, kempharris.band. So www.kempharris.band, and that's what I do where I'm playing, and there are videos there and other stuff around. But yeah, but I post I use Facebook just to post about my music. I used to go on Facebook and do the political thing and yelling at people and hitting the like that. I'm like, I ended up arguing with people I don't know. How can you say that? So I'm like, you know what? I just do my music, and I don't take pictures of food on Facebook. So if you go on my Facebook page, I'm generally talking about music and what I like, but I'm not giving political rants and raves anymore. But yeah, so I'm on social media and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. Download all of the songs in honor of Dr. King from all your favorite artists that we have talked about on this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. Visit iTunes.com, Spotify.com, or purchase a CD at Amazon.com. And make sure you check out Kemp Harris's new LP, The America Chronicles. It's available now streaming on iTunes, and you can also check it out on YouTube. And make sure you follow Kemp Harris. Look for him on Instagram at Kemp Harris Music. Also follow him on Facebook at Kemp Harris. And yes, Spotify we just mentioned. And also check out the music videos on YouTube we just mentioned. And go to his website at www.kempharris.band. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to check out this episode, please subscribe to the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. Look for me on these 5 platforms. I'm on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and Pocket Cast. And the link is riverside.fm/studio/Samuel-Wilson Jr.'s. Don't forget to add the S at the end, -studio. And I will be posting this episode on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And if you have a hard time getting on to riverside.fm, then please become a member and subscribe to patreon.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. Make sure you go use your email address and your password and go to the Patreon homepage where you see all the shows done by different creators. Go to the search box and type in the Black Soul Music Experience podcast, where you can check out all of my audio and video podcast episodes and video podcast episode clips that you may have missed. And if you have a hard time getting on to Patreon, then I will be posting this episode on YouTube. Go to youtube.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. If you like this episode, if you love my podcast, please subscribe, please support, please give me a thumbs up, please leave a comment, and please pass it on. Thank you for joining me as I close out this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. Happy birthday, Dr. King, and we will continue to keep the dream alive.
Well, that's about it for this edition of the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. I'm Sam Wilson Jr. Thank you for joining me, and please tune in next week for an all-new episode. The Black Soul Music Experience podcast is sponsored by the support of listeners and viewers like you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. Look for my podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and Pocket Cast. And don't forget the link. The link is riverside.fm/studio/Samuel-Wilson Jr.'s-studio. And don't forget to check out my audio and video podcast episodes by becoming a member and subscribe to patreon.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. And please check out my video podcast episodes by subscribing to youtube.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. And please leave your comments, feedbacks, and replies by going to my Facebook homepage. Go to facebook.com/the Black Soul Music Experience podcast. You can also tweet me on X, aka Twitter, at Sam Wilson Jr. 66. And follow me on Instagram at SAMM.Y2980. As always, partying, remember this. Reach for the top and your dreams will come true, and it can happen to you. From all of us, take care. God bless. Thanks for listening. Have a good week, and please be safe.